I trusted them with everything. Every secret I had, every hope, every dream, I shared with people I thought loved me. I believed in them the way a child believes the world is safe, the way someone trusts the hands that hold them steady. I never imagined that the very people I opened my heart to could turn it against me. I never imagined that the warmth I felt in their presence could one day feel like a knife pressing against my chest. It started with small things at first. A word here, a comment there. Little cracks I tried to ignore because I wanted to believe the best of them. I told myself that love makes people complicated, that misunderstandings are normal, that loyalty can sometimes falter but it will always return. And for a while, I held on to that. I held on as if my life depended on it, because in some ways, it did. Then came the moments that couldn't be ignored. The things that made me pause and question everything I thought I knew. A look that lasted too long, a laughter that didn't reach their eyes, promises that vanished without explanation. I felt the ground beneath me shift, but I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination. After all, I wanted to believe in them. I wanted to believe that people I loved could never hurt me so deeply. But they did. And when they did, I realized that love alone does not protect you. Trust alone does not keep you safe. Sometimes, the people you carry in your heart the most are the ones who leave the deepest wounds. And when it happened, I was left with a choice. I could let it break me, or I could learn from it. I could let the pain define me, or I could find a way to protect myself and reclaim what was mine. It is not an easy journey, learning to guard your heart while still remaining human. It is not simple to forgive yourself for trusting, to navigate the bitter ache of betrayal while still searching for the light in your life. But I discovered that even in the darkest moments, there is a way forward. I discovered that every hurt carries a lesson, that every broken trust teaches you something about who you are, and who you must become to survive. I want you to stay with me through this story because what I went through might feel familiar. You may have felt it yourself, the sting of someone you loved turning against you, the confusion, the heartbreak, the quiet questioning of your own judgment. And if you have, this story is for you. If you haven't yet, this story will show you a side of human nature that is often hidden, a side that teaches us how to protect ourselves before it's too late. This is not a story I tell lightly. It is a story I carry in my bones, in the way I breathe, in the way I look at the world now. It is a story of pain, yes, but also a story of survival, of finding strength in places you never thought to look, of learning that your heart can be broken but not destroyed. Stay with me to hear everything, the people I loved, the moments that changed everything, the choices I made, and the lessons I learned. You will hear how love can be both a gift and a danger, how trusting too much can hurt, and how, in the end, the most important person to protect is yourself. If you are ready, stay with me. If you want to understand what it really means to be hurt by those you love and to rise stronger, stay until the very end. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories like this, real stories from real lives, because this is Voice of Mama Grace, and this story, it's only beginning. Hi, I'm Mama Grace, and this is my story of love, betrayal, and survival. I want to take you with me into every corner of the life I once thought was safe, into the relationships I cherished, and into the moments that changed everything. This story is not just mine. It belongs to anyone who has ever trusted someone completely, anyone who has ever given their heart freely, and anyone who has felt the sting of disappointment from someone they loved. The story begins years ago, in a time when I believed in the goodness of people without question. My family had always been close, at least on the surface. We laughed together, celebrated birthdays together, supported each other in small and big ways, and I believed that no matter what, we would always be there for one another. My friends, the ones I called my chosen family, were the people I shared my secrets with, the people I celebrated victories with, the ones I turned to when the world felt heavy. And then there was love, the kind of love that fills your chest so fully you feel like it might burst at any moment. That love I poured into someone who promised forever, who whispered words meant to anchor me in happiness. At first, everything felt perfect. I didn't see the cracks in the walls, didn't notice the shadows that lingered just out of sight. I trusted without hesitation, gave without reservation, and believed that the people who said they loved me could never hurt me. And yet, life has a way of testing those beliefs, slowly, quietly, in ways you cannot prepare for. The first signs were almost imperceptible. A comment here that didn't sit right. A glance there that carried a weight I couldn't explain. Promises broken in ways that seemed small, almost accidental, but enough to make a whisper of doubt creep in. I remember thinking to myself, maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I'm overreacting. And for a long time, that belief kept me silent, kept me hopeful, kept me believing in the good even as the signs stacked quietly around me. Because hope is a stubborn thing, and when you want to see the best in people, you cling to it even when the evidence tells you otherwise. This period stretched over months, sometimes years. Every interaction became a test I didn't realize I was taking. Every conversation, every meeting, every word carried a hidden meaning I hadn't noticed before. And slowly, over time, I began to sense a change, a shift in the energy around me, subtle yet unmistakable. A friend who once checked in constantly began to disappear without explanation. A family member whose love had always felt unconditional now seemed distant, almost calculating. A partner, someone I had trusted with my heart, began to show cracks in the facade that had once seemed flawless. At first, I ignored these signs. I wanted to believe, because believing is easier than facing the truth. I told myself that misunderstandings happen, that people make mistakes, that life sometimes pulls us apart in ways we cannot control. I clung to memories of kindness, laughter, shared moments, hoping they could outweigh the growing unease. But the unease did not fade. It grew, quietly, like the slow accumulation of shadows in a room as the sun sets. And then I realized that what I had been ignoring could no longer be brushed aside. Something was wrong. Something was changing. And the people I had trusted the most were at the center of it. I want you to stop and reflect for a moment. Have you ever felt the warmth of someone's presence and then, almost imperceptibly, sensed a shift? Have you ever been close to someone, trusted them with your whole heart, and yet felt a creeping doubt that made you question everything you thought you knew? That is the point in life when innocence meets reality, the moment when you begin to understand that love and trust are fragile, and that the people who hold the power to hurt you are often those closest to your heart. As I look back, I can see all the little moments I ignored, all the warnings I missed, all the whispers of truth I chose not to hear. I remember a laugh that didn't reach the eyes, a glance that lingered a second too long, promises that vanished without explanation. Alone, these moments seemed insignificant. Together, they formed a pattern I tried desperately not to see. I wanted to protect my heart, to protect the love I had poured out, and so I kept believing, kept hoping, kept trusting. This story is about those months, those years, and how I moved through them, walking a tightrope of hope and doubt, love and pain, trust and fear. It is about the people I loved, the moments that changed everything, and the inner strength I had to discover in order to survive. By the end of this story, you will understand not only the hurt but also the lessons, the clarity, and the resilience that comes when you face betrayal head-on. So I ask you again, have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Someone you trusted with your heart? If you have, then you will understand this journey. And if you haven't, then this story will give you a glimpse into the fragile and complicated nature of human connection, and why learning to protect yourself is one of the most important lessons life can teach. Stay with me, because what comes next will take you deeper into the life I lived, the people I loved, and the experiences that reshaped my understanding of love, trust, and survival. This is Voice of Mama Grace, and this story, the story of how I was hurt by the people I loved and how I learned to protect myself, is only beginning. I remember the early days with them as vividly as if it were yesterday. There was a sense of comfort, a warmth that settled in my chest whenever I was around them. The kind of presence that made you believe the world outside could never touch you, because inside this circle of trust, everything was safe. I trusted them because they listened, not just with their ears, but with their eyes, their gestures, their whole being. When I spoke, I felt heard, truly heard, in a way that made the ordinary feel extraordinary. We laughed together often. Small things, a joke at the wrong time, a silly story from my childhood, a shared glance over something no one else understood, these moments became the glue that tied us together. I would remember the way they smiled at me, a smile that seemed to understand all my fears and all my hopes. And I, in turn, shared pieces of myself that I rarely gave to anyone. My secrets, my worries, my dreams for the future, I handed them over without hesitation because I felt safe. I felt that same safety every time I saw them, every time I heard their voice. The trust wasn't just in words. It was in gestures. The way they reached out to hold my hand when I was nervous, the gentle touch on my shoulder when they wanted to reassure me, the way their eyes softened when I spoke of things close to my heart. I believed in the small things as much as the big ones because those small things built a foundation. I believed in shared memories, the afternoons spent talking without a care, the late-night conversations where the world seemed to pause just for us. Every laugh, every smile, every moment of intimacy was a piece of the puzzle that made me feel loved, cherished, and safe. And in those early days, I didn't question anything. I didn't see the subtle moments of hesitation in their eyes, the slight tension in their body when I shared something personal, the way they sometimes looked away just a fraction too long. I didn't notice because trust made me blind, and love made me willing to ignore anything that could hint at doubt. I wanted to believe in them so deeply that I overlooked the hints that something might not be as perfect as it seemed. We shared dreams too. I spoke about my hopes, my goals, the future I wanted to build, and they listened, nodding, encouraging, promising silently that they were there to help me reach it. They spoke about their own plans, their own desires, and I felt a connection so strong it felt unbreakable. I believed that this bond was beyond ordinary, that it was built on mutual understanding and shared hearts. I didn't see the cracks forming because I was too busy reveling in the warmth, too caught up in the laughter, too reliant on the comfort I felt. I remember one evening clearly. We sat on the porch, the sky painted in the soft glow of sunset, the world around us quiet except for the hum of life carrying on in the distance. I laughed at something small, and they laughed too, not just a polite laugh, but a full, honest one that made the corners of their eyes crinkle and my heart swell with happiness. I felt I could tell them anything. I felt like nothing could ever come between us. And yet, even in that perfect moment, a tiny seed of unease lingered, so subtle I barely recognized it. A word spoken a little too carefully, a pause that lasted just a fraction too long. I brushed it aside. I wanted to believe everything was fine. I told myself I was imagining things. I wanted to believe so badly that nothing else mattered. I shared my dreams with them, my plans to grow, to create, to live fully. And they encouraged me, spoke words meant to lift me higher, told me I was capable, that I could achieve everything I set my mind to. I felt seen. I felt validated. And that sense of being understood, of being held in someone's mind and heart, made me trust them even more. I confided things I had never shared with anyone else. Secrets that were fragile, delicate, vulnerable. And they received them as if they were treasures, nodding, listening, never judging, always understanding. We celebrated each other's victories, small and large. A promotion, a birthday, a personal achievement. I felt a sense of camaraderie, of connection, that made me believe that nothing could ever shatter this bond. And I clung to it, because life can be hard, and having someone you trust completely makes the hard parts easier. I believed in them. I believed in us. I believed that everything we shared was built to last. But then, just when I allowed myself to feel completely safe, completely happy, completely untouchable in that trust, the first sign of betrayal appeared. I didn't recognize it at first. It was quiet, almost imperceptible. A look that lingered just a little too long, a hesitation in their words, a small action that didn't match what they said. I noticed it for only a second and then tried to brush it away, thinking I was overreacting. But that second, that small flicker of doubt, was the beginning. The first crack in what I thought was an unbreakable foundation. I thought everything was perfect, until that moment, when I realized that maybe, just maybe, nothing is ever truly perfect. And that realization, small as it was at first, would grow, slowly and relentlessly, until it became a force that would demand I see the truth, feel the pain, and learn how to survive it. After those early days of laughter and trust, the first hints of trouble began to appear. At first, I couldn't put my finger on what felt wrong. Everything seemed normal on the surface, and I wanted to believe it was normal. But small incidents, tiny shifts in behavior, began to pull at the edges of my certainty. A friend who once called daily now went days without reaching out. Messages I once expected to be answered immediately lingered, unread, as if the connection we once shared had frayed just a little. Sometimes it was in the way someone looked at me, a flicker in their eyes I couldn't explain. Other times it was a tone in their voice, just a beat too sharp, too quick, or too distant. I tried to rationalize it. They must be busy, I told myself. It's nothing. I'm reading too much into it. And yet, the feeling wouldn't leave me. A knot began to grow quietly in my stomach, subtle at first, then more persistent. A sense that something wasn't right, even when everything appeared perfectly fine. I remember one particular afternoon that now stands out in my memory. We were supposed to meet for a simple lunch, something casual, just the two of us. I arrived early, full of anticipation, eager to see them, to talk, to laugh like we always did. But when they arrived, something was off. They smiled, but it didn't reach their eyes. Their words were polite, yes, but clipped, distant. The laughter I had grown accustomed to felt rehearsed, or maybe it was just that it didn't carry the warmth I remembered. I caught myself searching for an explanation, for anything that could excuse the unease in my chest. Then there were the promises that began to slip away. Nothing dramatic at first, nothing I could accuse anyone of intentionally doing. A plan forgotten, a call not returned, a favor I needed delayed without a word. And I found myself making excuses for them, telling myself I was being sensitive, that I should let it go, that I was overthinking. I wanted to believe that love and friendship could weather small storms, that the people I cared for would never truly let me down. But these small disappointments began to pile up, each one a quiet reminder that something was changing. I also noticed moments of exclusion, subtle enough that I questioned myself. Conversations I was once part of no longer included me. Decisions made that affected me, yet I was not consulted. Little things that might seem insignificant to anyone else, but to me, they were like tiny cracks forming in a mirror I had assumed was unbreakable. I began to feel a tension I didn't want to acknowledge. A whisper of doubt that I shoved deep down, afraid of what it might mean if I listened. There were also small moments of contradiction. Words that didn't match actions, promises that went unfulfilled. Someone would say they cared, that they valued me, but their behavior sometimes told a different story. I wanted to ignore it, to hold on to the comfort I felt in their presence, but the evidence kept surfacing in small, undeniable ways. And each time I tried to dismiss it, the knot in my stomach tightened just a little more. I began questioning myself, asking if I was imagining things. Was I too sensitive? Was I misreading harmless actions? I kept replaying moments over and over, analyzing every glance, every word, every gesture. And with every replay, I saw things that made me pause, things that couldn't easily be explained away. Yet, I stayed silent. I stayed hopeful. I stayed trusting, because I wanted to believe that the people I loved could never truly hurt me. Have you ever noticed signs but ignored them? I did too. I saw the inconsistencies, the subtle shifts in behavior, but I wanted to believe in them so badly that I refused to fully acknowledge what they were hinting at. I wanted to believe that the laughter, the warmth, the history we shared was enough to overcome anything. And for a while, that belief carried me forward. But the small incidents began to add up. Each one, in isolation, could be explained away. A missed call, a forgotten promise, a dismissive remark, it could be human error. But together, they formed a pattern. And even as I tried to deny it, even as I told myself I was overreacting, the feeling of unease became impossible to ignore. It was as if a silent alarm was going off inside me, a warning I wanted to silence but couldn't. I remember the day I first confronted myself about it. Sitting alone, I realized that the comfort I had felt for so long was starting to feel fragile. I realized that trust, once given freely, could be tested without warning. I realized that love, even the deepest love, could carry the seeds of betrayal if one isn't careful. And in that moment, I understood that I could no longer ignore the signs, no matter how subtle, no matter how much I wanted to. From that point, my life began to change in ways I didn't yet understand. The foundation I had built with these people, the trust I had given so freely, started to tremble. The warmth I had relied on began to feel uncertain. And yet, I kept moving forward, hoping that things would improve, hoping that these subtle red flags were just moments, anomalies in an otherwise stable life. But deep down, I knew. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, in the quiet moments when I was alone. The small incidents, the contradictions, the subtle shifts in behavior, they were not random. They were warnings. And I would soon learn that the people I loved most could hurt me in ways I could never have imagined. It started one evening that should have been ordinary. We had planned to meet at my place, just to talk, to laugh, to feel that sense of closeness I had grown to rely on. I remember setting the table for two, the quiet hum of the evening outside, the soft fading light in the room. I was happy, calm, completely unaware that everything was about to shift in a single, unnoticeable moment. They arrived, and at first, everything seemed the same. The smile, the familiar greetings, the way they embraced me, it all seemed normal. And for a few minutes, I felt safe, like nothing could touch me. We sat, we talked, we laughed lightly about things we had joked about countless times before. But then, a change happened that was so subtle I almost missed it. A hesitation in their voice, a pause too long, a glance that didn't quite meet mine. I should have noticed it. I should have seen it for what it was. But I didn't. And then it happened. The first words that cut deeper than any argument ever could. "I don't think you understand what I've been dealing with," they said, their tone calm but firm. "I can't be everything you want me to be." I froze. I didn't know what to say. I had always believed we were partners in everything, emotional, practical, mental. And yet, in that moment, their words felt like a wall rising between us. I thought we were in this together," I said slowly, my voice almost breaking. "I trusted you. I believed in us." They looked at me then, and there was a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. Was it guilt? Indifference? Something else entirely? "I never said I couldn't hurt you," they replied quietly. I thought you'd understand me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced, trying to comprehend, trying to rationalize. Maybe they were tired, maybe stressed. I wanted to believe that. I clung to that hope desperately, even as a strange, sinking feeling settled in my chest. What would you have done in my place? I want you to pause and think about that for a moment. Imagine someone you trusted completely, someone you believed would always be there, saying those words to you. How would your heart react? How would your mind try to make sense of it? I can tell you how mine reacted. I felt a cold ache, a twisting pain that I had never known before, a mix of disbelief, confusion, and fear. After that conversation, things shifted dramatically. I tried to act as if nothing had changed, tried to continue as we always had, but I couldn't. Every glance, every word, every smile now carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I began noticing small patterns I had brushed aside before, but now they were impossible to overlook. I noticed how they spoke to others, the way they laughed in public, the way their eyes followed people I didn't recognize. I noticed promises made to me that were quietly broken, without apology, without explanation. And each time I noticed, the ache in my chest grew a little more. There was one evening that broke me in ways I will never forget. I had invited them to dinner, hoping to reclaim some of the trust that had started to unravel. I had prepared their favorite meal, lit the candles, made everything feel intimate and safe. And yet, during that dinner, I saw it. I saw the way their attention drifted, not once, not twice, but again and again. Phone buzzing constantly, messages answered with quick, almost secretive gestures, laughter shared with someone on the other end that I was not part of. I didn't say anything at first. I sat there, quietly, watching the person I loved the most drift further away with every passing second. I felt a tightening in my throat, a panic in my chest that I tried desperately to swallow down. But my heart knew the truth before my mind would accept it. The betrayal had begun, not with a fight, not with anger, but with distance, secrecy, and disregard for the trust I had given freely. Finally, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, "Who are you talking to?" "Oh, it's nothing. Just someone checking in," they replied quickly, too quickly. Their eyes darted to mine and then away, avoiding the confrontation. That moment, that glance, that hesitation, it stayed with me. It haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just glimpsed a side of them I had never seen before, a side that didn't care as much as I thought they did, a side that could hurt me without regret. I remember the silence that followed. The room felt heavier, the air tighter. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand an explanation, but I didn't. I sat there, letting the meal grow cold, letting the words I wanted to say choke in my throat. Because in that moment, I understood that the betrayal wasn't a single action, it was a pattern, a shift in behavior, a revelation that someone I loved could no longer be counted on the way I thought they could. I left the dinner that night feeling hollow, carrying a weight that was impossible to describe. The betrayal had started, small but undeniable, and it would only grow if I continued to ignore it. I realized then that the world I thought I had built, the safety I had felt in their presence, was crumbling around me. And yet, even in that darkness, there was a faint spark of determination, an understanding that I could either let this destroy me, or I could rise, protect myself, and learn from it. Have you ever felt that? That first moment when someone you trusted shows a side of themselves that makes your heart hurt in ways you never imagined. When you realize that the person you loved more than anything could fail you in ways you hadn't considered. It's confusing, it's painful, and it forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd never had to before, the parts that allowed you to trust so freely, the parts that believed in the goodness of others without question. That was the beginning, the first major moment that made me see the cracks, that made me realize that trust could be fragile, that love could be complicated, and that survival sometimes requires learning to guard your heart. And though I didn't know it yet, it would take everything I had, everything I would come to learn about resilience, self-respect, and discernment, to get through the next chapters of this story. After that night, everything changed. I began to notice the weight of betrayal in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just a single moment or a single act, it was a growing ache that settled deep in my chest, a persistent reminder that the people I loved could fail me. I started questioning everything. My judgment, my instincts, my ability to know who truly cared about me. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations over and over in my mind. Every laugh, every word, every gesture I had once taken for granted now seemed suspect. I wondered if I had misread the signs for years, if all the trust I had given freely had been misplaced. Self-doubt crept in quietly, like a shadow, whispering that maybe I wasn't enough, that maybe I had asked for too much, that maybe the hurt was somehow my fault. I withdrew. I stopped calling as often, stopped reaching out, stopped sharing parts of myself that I had once given so freely. I felt isolated, even when surrounded by people I had always trusted. The betrayal didn't just hurt, it changed the way I saw the world. It made me cautious, hesitant, and constantly on guard. Every message, every glance, every word carried hidden meanings I feared but couldn't ignore. I began to replay memories, small moments from the past that I had once cherished. I remembered afternoons spent laughing with friends who now seemed distant. I remembered intimate conversations with the person I loved, words I had taken as assurances of care and loyalty. And I realized that some of those memories were tainted, now, by the knowledge that trust can be fragile, that people can hurt even when you least expect it. There were moments when the grief hit me so hard that it felt physical. I would sit alone, feeling the ache in my chest, the emptiness in my stomach, the heaviness of knowing that someone I loved could betray me. I cried silently, not wanting anyone to see, because there was shame in the vulnerability, a sense that somehow I had failed by being too trusting, by caring too much, by giving my heart without reservation. One evening, I found myself wandering through old photos, snapshots of happier times. I smiled at first, remembering the laughter and the warmth. But then the weight returned, sharper than before. I saw the glances, the moments of subtle distance, the tiny cracks I had ignored for too long. And I realized that grief isn't just about loss, it's about seeing what you thought was solid begin to crumble, and having no choice but to sit with the pain while figuring out what comes next. I had flashbacks constantly, small moments that now carried new meaning. A promise broken without explanation. A phone call unanswered for hours, then brushed off as unimportant. A smile that didn't reach the eyes. I saw it everywhere, in every interaction, in every pause, in every word that didn't match the action. And I began to learn a harsh truth, betrayal is rarely sudden. It creeps in quietly, disguising itself in small acts, until one day, you wake up and realize the foundation you built your trust on has shifted. And yet, even in the darkness, small sparks of resilience began to flicker. I noticed them in subtle ways. I began listening to my instincts more closely. I began questioning actions and words that I had once taken at face value. I began protecting myself, not aggressively, not harshly, but with quiet awareness. I started setting small boundaries, testing how people responded when I expressed my needs. I learned to observe without immediately trusting, to hope without ignoring warning signs, to love without giving away my power entirely. There were tiny victories in these moments. I remembered a time when someone reached out to apologize for something minor, and instead of immediately forgiving, I paused, asked questions, and listened carefully before responding. The realization that I could assert myself, that I could demand respect and clarity, was empowering. I was beginning to understand that survival wasn't about shutting people out completely, it was about learning to navigate relationships with wisdom and self-respect. I also found solace in memories of myself before the betrayal. I remembered the joy I felt when sharing a laugh with someone I loved, the comfort of being heard, the warmth of connection. And I realized that while betrayal could hurt deeply, it couldn't erase those moments, couldn't erase the parts of me that had felt love so fully. I began to hold on to that, using it as a quiet anchor, a reminder that I could endure, that I could heal, that I could learn from the pain without letting it destroy me. During this period, I often asked myself, how do you rebuild trust once it's broken? How do you protect your heart without closing it completely? The answers weren't clear at first, but slowly, over months of reflection, observation, and careful emotional experiments, I began to find a rhythm. I learned to listen to my instincts, to trust my inner voice, to recognize the subtle signals that warned me of potential hurt. I realized that the power I thought I had lost was still there, quietly waiting to be claimed again. And that is where the first steps toward self-protection began. Not in grand gestures, not in confrontation, but in awareness. In noticing the small things that once slipped by unnoticed. In asking questions, in pausing, in refusing to accept excuses without consideration. In understanding that my heart was valuable, that my trust was precious, and that betrayal, no matter how painful, could be a teacher if I allowed it to be. I want you to pause here and reflect. Have you ever felt that quiet spiral of emotions, where grief, confusion, and self-doubt mix in a way that makes you question everything you believed? I did. I felt it constantly, every day, every moment, until I learned that the only way to survive was to hold on to the small sparks of clarity, to take tiny steps toward protecting myself, and to understand that resilience isn't built in a day, it's built in quiet moments of observation, reflection, and determination. By the end of this segment, I had begun to see patterns I had ignored, to recognize signs I had dismissed, and to understand that the betrayal, while painful, was also a turning point. It forced me to face the truth, to confront the discomfort, and to begin the journey of self-protection that would ultimately allow me to emerge stronger, wiser, and more aware of the people I allowed into my life. The day it all came crashing down is etched in my memory. I woke with a sense of unease I couldn't shake. The morning felt heavier than usual. Something was off, though I couldn't name it. I tried to brush it aside, telling myself it was nothing. But instinct, that quiet voice I had begun learning to trust, whispered that today would change everything. I went about my routine, the normal motions feeling hollow. Every message I received, every call I ignored, carried a weight I couldn't explain. Then the truth hit me, not slowly, not gently, but like a wave crashing over everything I had known. I saw it. The evidence. Clear. Undeniable. The person I had trusted above all else, who had held my heart, my secrets, my dreams, had been hiding things from me. Things I wasn't supposed to know. Conversations, connections, actions, all pointing to a betrayal that was bigger than I could have imagined. I remember staring at my phone. My hands shook. My chest felt tight. The words blurred before my eyes. How could someone I loved so completely have deceived me so thoroughly? When I confronted them, the room seemed to shrink. Every glance, every gesture was magnified. Their eyes avoided mine, their hands fidgeted, their voice quivered slightly. I didn't mean for you to find out this way, they said. Find out what? I asked, my voice calm but my heart hammering. How long were you planning to hide this from me? There was silence, long silence, and in that silence, everything became clear. The trust I had placed in them, the love I had given so freely, had been taken for granted, manipulated, and broken. I thought you'd understand, they whispered finally. I realized then that understanding was not enough. Trust had been broken, promises shattered, and my heart that had been open, vulnerable, and trusting, was hurt in a way I had never imagined. I felt every emotion at once: anger, grief, disbelief, sorrow, and a deep, aching hurt that seemed to settle into my bones. I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But the answers didn't change what had happened. The betrayal was real, and I had to face it, fully and completely, without denial, without excuses. For a long moment, I just stared. I remembered every time I had ignored small red flags, every time I had justified their actions, every time I had brushed aside my instincts. The weight of all those moments pressed down on me. But then, slowly, clarity emerged through the pain. I realized something crucial: I had to protect myself. No one else would. I could not rely on someone who had shown they could hurt me. I could not hand over my heart so freely again without caution. And in that realization, a seed of strength took root. I took a deep breath. I told them, quietly but firmly, I trusted you. I gave everything I had. And now, I need to take care of myself. That moment, that simple declaration, felt like reclaiming my power. The betrayal still hurt. It always would. But for the first time, I wasn't just the person who had been hurt. I was someone who recognized my worth, who would not allow my trust to be trampled again. I left the room then, carrying the weight of betrayal but also carrying the spark of resilience. The world outside didn't change, but I did. I had faced the deepest hurt, and I had survived it. Have you ever felt this betrayed? Have you ever realized that someone you trusted could hurt you in ways you didn't anticipate? Share your story in the comments below. Because the truth is, betrayal is painful, but it can also teach us about our own strength, our own value, and the need to protect ourselves. And as I walked away, I knew that life would never be the same, but I also knew that I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, my trust, and my heart. That moment of clarity, of realization, of facing the betrayal fully, was the turning point. From here, my journey was no longer about what others had done to me, it was about what I would do for myself. After the confrontation, life felt heavy, but I slowly realized that the weight I carried could be transformed into strength. The first thing I did was allow myself to feel. I stopped pretending everything was fine. I stopped rationalizing, ignoring, or excusing the betrayal. I sat with the hurt, the anger, and the grief, letting each emotion wash over me fully. It was painful, yes, but necessary. Because until I faced it, I could never begin to heal. I began taking small steps to reclaim my sense of self. I spent time alone, reflecting on who I was outside of the relationships that had hurt me. I journaled constantly, pouring out my fears, my questions, and my doubts. Writing became a mirror, showing me not only my pain but also my resilience. I started noticing patterns I had ignored for too long, the times I had compromised my boundaries, the moments I had trusted too easily, the ways I had given without expecting care in return. Boundaries became my first line of defense. I learned to say no, not harshly, not with anger, but firmly. I learned to ask for what I needed, and to expect respect in return. I realized that love without trust is dangerous, that no amount of affection or history could justify ignoring red flags or tolerating repeated hurt. And I began to understand that protecting myself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. We celebrated each other's victories, small and large. A promotion, a birthday, a personal achievement. I felt a sense of camaraderie, of connection, that made me believe that nothing could ever shatter this bond. And I clung to it, because life can be hard, and having someone you trust completely makes the hard parts easier. I believed in them. I believed in us. I believed that everything we shared was built to last. But then, just when I allowed myself to feel completely safe, completely happy, completely untouchable in that trust, the first sign of betrayal appeared. I didn't recognize it at first, it was quiet, almost imperceptible. A look that lingered just a little too long, a hesitation in their words, a small action that didn't match what they said. I noticed it for only a second and then tried to brush it away, thinking I was overreacting. But that second, that small flicker of doubt, was the beginning. The first crack in what I thought was an unbreakable foundation. I thought everything was perfect, until that moment, when I realized that maybe, just maybe, nothing is ever truly perfect. And that realization, small as it was at first, would grow, slowly and relentlessly, until it became a force that would demand I see the truth, feel the pain, and learn how to survive it. After those early days of laughter and trust, the first hints of trouble began to appear. At first, I couldn't put my finger on what felt wrong. Everything seemed normal on the surface, and I wanted to believe it was normal. But small incidents, tiny shifts in behavior, began to pull at the edges of my certainty. A friend who once called daily now went days without reaching out. Messages I once expected to be answered immediately lingered, unread, as if the connection we once shared had frayed just a little. Sometimes it was in the way someone looked at me, a flicker in their eyes I couldn't explain. Other times it was a tone in their voice, just a beat too sharp, too quick, or too distant. I tried to rationalize it. They must be busy, I told myself. It's nothing. I'm reading too much into it. And yet, the feeling wouldn't leave me. A knot began to grow quietly in my stomach, subtle at first, then more persistent. A sense that something wasn't right, even when everything appeared perfectly fine. I remember one particular afternoon that now stands out in my memory. We were supposed to meet for a simple lunch, something casual, just the two of us. I arrived early, full of anticipation, eager to see them, to talk, to laugh like we always did. But when they arrived, something was off. They smiled, but it didn't reach their eyes. Their words were polite, yes, but clipped, distant. The laughter I had grown accustomed to felt rehearsed, or maybe it was just that it didn't carry the warmth I remembered. I caught myself searching for an explanation, for anything that could excuse the unease in my chest. Then there were the promises that began to slip away. Nothing dramatic at first, nothing I could accuse anyone of intentionally doing. A plan forgotten, a call not returned, a favor I needed delayed without a word. And I found myself making excuses for them, telling myself I was being sensitive, that I should let it go, that I was overthinking. I wanted to believe that love and friendship could weather small storms, that the people I cared for would never truly let me down. But these small disappointments began to pile up, each one a quiet reminder that something was changing. I also noticed moments of exclusion, subtle enough that I questioned myself. Conversations I was once part of no longer included me. Decisions made that affected me, yet I was not consulted. Little things that might seem insignificant to anyone else, but to me, they were like tiny cracks forming in a mirror I had assumed was unbreakable. I began to feel a tension I didn't want to acknowledge. A whisper of doubt that I shoved deep down, afraid of what it might mean if I listened. There were also small moments of contradiction. Words that didn't match actions, promises that went unfulfilled. Someone would say they cared, that they valued me, but their behavior sometimes told a different story. I wanted to ignore it, to hold on to the comfort I felt in their presence, but the evidence kept surfacing in small, undeniable ways. And each time I tried to dismiss it, the knot in my stomach tightened just a little more. I began questioning myself, asking if I was imagining things. Was I too sensitive? Was I misreading harmless actions? I kept replaying moments over and over, analyzing every glance, every word, every gesture. And with every replay, I saw things that made me pause, things that couldn't easily be explained away. Yet, I stayed silent. I stayed hopeful. I stayed trusting, because I wanted to believe that the people I loved could never truly hurt me. Have you ever noticed signs but ignored them? I did too. I saw the inconsistencies, the subtle shifts in behavior, but I wanted to believe in them so badly that I refused to fully acknowledge what they were hinting at. I wanted to believe that the laughter, the warmth, the history we shared was enough to overcome anything. And for a while, that belief carried me forward. But the small incidents began to add up. Each one, in isolation, could be explained away. A missed call, a forgotten promise, a dismissive remark, it could be human error. But together, they formed a pattern. And even as I tried to deny it, even as I told myself I was overreacting, the feeling of unease became impossible to ignore. It was as if a silent alarm was going off inside me, a warning I wanted to silence but couldn't. I remember the day I first confronted myself about it. Sitting alone, I realized that the comfort I had felt for so long was starting to feel fragile. I realized that trust, once given freely, could be tested without warning. I realized that love, even the deepest love, could carry the seeds of betrayal if one isn't careful. And in that moment, I understood that I could no longer ignore the signs, no matter how subtle, no matter how much I wanted to. From that point, my life began to change in ways I didn't yet understand. The foundation I had built with these people, the trust I had given so freely, started to tremble. The warmth I had relied on began to feel uncertain. And yet, I kept moving forward, hoping that things would improve, hoping that these subtle red flags were just moments, anomalies in an otherwise stable life.